welcome to episode 29 of the Tea and Possibilities podcast. I'm Nikki and this is a podcast all about knitting, crochet and making all the things here in northwest London. You can find me online at hippie_Nikki on Twitter and Instagram. I'm on Ravelry as Nikki Hippie, and if you search for Tea and Possibilities under the groups tab, you will find all of us right there. The show notes, as always, will be on my blog, and links to everything I just mentioned will be just down below. As always, I would like to kick off by saying a massive welcome back to my returning viewers. I really appreciate you coming back every week. And to any new viewers, thank you so much for giving the podcast a shot. I really hope you enjoy your time here. Once again, it's not tea that I'm drinking this week. I'm really sorry guys, it is just too hot. Literally just water again. I really need to get round to making some iced tea because I'm getting quite bored of just constant water, but it is so hot. All of the English podcasters are saying it. They're not wrong. I'm just adding to the chorus of it's really blooming warm in England right now. Yeah, I'm looking out, there's not a cloud in the sky. It's bright, bright blue and beautiful. And I might go out and have a little bit of a sunbathe with my knitting later on after I've recorded, but yeah, need to stay hydrated in this weather. I'm actually filming on Pride Day. It's London Pride today. As you can tell by the fact that I'm here, I am not heading out to the parade today. It's just a bit too hot for me to be in a crowd, and it's not something I find very pleasant. I commute into central London every day during the week and I just couldn't face it this morning. But to everybody who is taking part in the parade or celebrating Pride in any other way, I wish you the very best day possible and I hope you have a great one. I thought the post that Casey posted on the Ravelry homepage about Pride and Ravelry flying the Pride flag was a really beautiful post, and I heartily recommend you go and have a read of it if you haven't already. And it captured all of my thoughts much better than my babbling ever could. So there are a couple of things I would like to mention before we dive into the podcast proper. If you signed up for a pen pal, you should have received a message from me earlier this week, just giving you all their details. If you missed out this time, I'm really sorry, but I will be doing another call for pen pals at the end of September, looking to match you in early October. Just to let you know though, this is probably not going to be something I do again next year. I've been thinking about better ways of doing it because I think pen paling is fun, and I'm actually going to be sitting down writing to my pen pal this afternoon. Hi Rachel, by the way, and I really enjoy it. But this is probably not the best way to organise it. So I'm figuring out what to do for next year. So you will still be able to get a pen pal if you want any more. If you're watching this in the future, there will still be ways to get pen pals. It just won't be quarterly sign-ups. And I will let you know all about that when I know more. Secondly, you might have noticed that the last few episodes have not been weekly. This has been something I was trying out before making it official. As you may know or not know, I work full-time, so I work 9 to 6 in central London. It can be quite a tiring week, which means I have very short weekends, or at least they feel that way. So I want to kind of have a lie-in and see my friends and knit and do all that good stuff. And podcasting takes a big chunk out of my weekend, and I love doing it. But on the weekends where I've been going, as soon as I'm done here, I'm running out the door, it can get a little bit stressful. So I've decided for the time being to take the podcast to every other week. And this will mean that you get a little bit more in every podcast. Probably not at the moment because it's so warm. And then if I've got a free weekend, I can podcast and you'll get an extra episode. So that's really exciting for me because it also means that there is more chance for me to create other content. I will come to that later. But now let's move on to Whipped Up. I've just realised I've probably drunk off a lot of my lipstick. I didn't think to run upstairs and check before I sat down in front of the camera. So If I look a bit dishevelled, I'm really sorry. It was too hot to dry my hair. It was too hot to put any jewellery on. Yeah, which is why you're probably going to be a little bit disappointed in the progress that I've made. Last week, I only had one evening at home. It was insane. I got barely anything done because I was out literally every night. I had a cold and was just feeling really ill by the weekend and spent a lot of it sleeping and the rest of it kind of dabbing myself with a cold flannel because it was warm. Shock horror. And this week I have been trying to make up for that. So I am warning you now, there is not much difference from the last episode. I have been really trying to make lots of things, but I've been having to put it down a lot because my hands get quite clammy, which is not ideal. And I've been doing a lot of park knitting. But I digress. We will come to that. Let's start with my Shanghai Stripes blanket. I'm almost halfway! I know I said I wanted to be halfway by the end of June, and I tried. I really, really did try. I just didn't have the time in that last week of June. As I said, I was out every evening, and they were all commitments that I couldn't get out of or didn't want to get out of, so it was just unfortunate they all fell in one week. So since the Sunday of that week, I've been working really hard to get at least a row done every night. And I'm almost halfway. So I've just got to do, when this red is finished, I've got to do the dark red and then go back through this red, this orange and the pale orange. And then I will be halfway. I think I'm just going to try and stick to trying to do a row every night because it seems to be working for me. I have embraced the fact that this is not going to get to her shortly after she arrives in China. It's probably going to be a Christmas gift. My friends and I are planning a afternoon tea, I think we've settled on, with my friend who's leaving, and we're going to arrange that as a surprise. So she will have a very English afternoon tea before she leaves. And then we are doing a Secret Santa this year between us. But we are probably going to all club together to send her one big happy care package from us. Because as far as I know, she's not coming home for Christmas. So I figure what better time to receive a blanket, right? I am really in love with this. As soon as I start working on it, I just get really into it. It's so rhythmic. We are trying to catch up on Better Call Saul, so I can just hook away while I'm watching it, and it's perfect TV crochet. I just wish it wasn't so warm, which is a ridiculous thing to wish for a blanket. If only I could have it not be warm now and then have it magically be warm when it's finished. That would be ideal. I don't know why I'm sat here covering myself up. All I can see outside is beautiful sun and I'm sat here wrapping myself in a blanket. The things I do for you guys. I'm doing this for you. Next up is my Graham hat by Jennifer Adams, and this is living as always in my bag that the lovely Odd Knits Adventures sent me. But before I show you what progress I have made, I would like to show you the original Graham hat that I made. There we go. This was the very first hat I ever knit, I think. I can't remember there being one before this. It was in Jill Draper Make Stuff in this beautiful, really lovely rich brown, and it's covered in my hair, which he probably won't appreciate. And I have stolen it for the podcast. He is actually off visiting his family in Cornwall this weekend, and I'm sure he doesn't regret not taking his hat with him because it's a very toasty hat. But this was the first one I made, and it stood up amazingly well to where he's put it through, because he has worn it a lot. But I had no issues knitting this whatsoever. It was my first hat project. I found it really, really simple. The yarn was perfect. The stitch definition in this yarn, you probably can't see, it's not coming up on the camera, but it is perfect. And I show you this as a demonstration that I can knit hats, and I'm not a total numpty. Now I have my tale of woe about my current Graham hat. this is where I am with my current Graham hat. And if you were thinking, gosh, Nikki, that was like very similar to 2 weeks ago and I thought you would have finished it by now. I know, so did I. This beauty has been my handbag knitting, so this has come with me to my lunch in the park every day over the past couple of weeks, and that will probably explain to you why it got to about this length, and this is the length including the crown decreases. I don't know if you can see that there, it's starting to curve in, because I just kept knitting and was like, oh, I'm sure it's not big enough yet. So I had to rip back. I ripped back and I started the crown decreases, and then I looked at it and was like, that looks a bit weird, because about here, just halfway down the hat, there was what I thought was a crease from being folded up inside the project bag. And I paid it no mind because I just kind of glanced at it and went, oh yeah, that'll block out, not a problem. And this Friday lunchtime, as I was sat in the park, working on my crown decreases, I looked at it again and I was like, I can't believe that hasn't, I've been really careful not to fold it there. I can't believe that hasn't sort of eased itself out. And then I looked closer and realised that what I had done was in the middle of a rib row, I had just decided to do a line of knit stitches. Not all the way around, so I couldn't call it design feature, and then carried on. I don't know why I did that. It was a bit of a numpty thing to do. And I kind of did another row of my crown decreases and was like, it was fine. The person it's for, they won't even notice. But it bothered me so much. So I ripped out my crown decreases, and then I ripped out about an inch and a half of the actual body of the hat. And then I started knitting round again. And last night I got up to the crown decreases. And we popped on The Edge of Tomorrow, which is a great film. I really enjoyed it. And I thought, I'll just work my crown decreases while I watch this. It's going to be finished by the end of the film. And then I looked at it and was like, that looks really weird. It looks like the pattern is kind of offset by one. And then I looked again and realised that obviously I had taken out the stitch marker marking the beginning of my round in order to rip back. And I had obviously put it back in the wrong place. Wrong by about one stitch, and it had just knocked everything off. So I pulled out my crown decreases. I picked it all back up again, and I was about to start knitting, and Rich, in his infinite wisdom, put his hand out and just said, maybe you work on your blanket. I think he's seen that face before, that face of, I'm going to sit up until 3 a.m. to correct the mistakes that I've made. That is something I tend to do when he's not here, so it's probably something that might happen while he's away this week. But he has seen it often enough to tell me to stop. So I picked up my blanket instead, and he was quite right, and I got up this morning, and while he was doing his packing and getting ready to go, I started work on my crown decreases and I'm about halfway through them. So I haven't got very many rows to go, so I will be finishing this tonight. I don't know if I'll get all my editing done first, or if, this will be my treat at the end of it, or if I'll just get this done and then do my editing. I'm not sure. But this will be done for the next podcast, I promise. So yes, next time you see me, I should be done with my second hat of my hat kick. And hopefully I will have cast on my pink hat. If you remember, I actually said I was casting on this grey Graham hat because I needed something really simple and straightforward after the Twisted Knots hat, which I made a few weeks ago. I would just like to point out, I didn't even make that many mistakes in the very complicated cabled hat that I knit. I say very complicated, I mean in relation to this. Relatively, that was a lot more complicated than this one, and this is the one that I've had all the trouble with. So, I guess that's just the way it always goes, isn't it? I am so excited to cast that hat on, you have no idea. I'm really excited to work on the pattern and to see how it knits up. I'm even more excited to get it wrapped and given away. And yeah, I'm just brimming, ready to do that. I actually find that hyper patterned hats like that, when I do have to rip back, I find them much easier to pick up again, because you have this pattern that you can refer back to in a chart or in the written pattern, which takes a bit longer, but you know, you can still find it. Whenever I'm doing something with just straight stockinette, I'm just like, well, where was I? That bit looks much the same as that bit, and yeah, I blame the heat. The heat has melted my brain. Just as an aside, I know that I've mentioned the heat so much already this episode. It's quite difficult not to when you are feeling all sticky and I'm only just sitting here. But I love it. I am not equipped for it. I am English. I am not built for this weather in any way, but I love it because it's so beautiful to go out and see my lovely city just glowing and sparkling in the sunshine. I absolutely love it. So much as I'm ill-suited to this weather and I'm unable to be one of those chic women who, no matter how hot it gets, always look immaculate, I still love it. I just look a bit, bedraggled while it's happening. And as an English person, unfortunately, when it gets hot, I'm always going to be going, oh my God, it is so warm. Like, this never happens. We never get heat like this. We get it every year, unless we're really unlucky. It's always a surprise. As I've said, my next hat after the pink beeswax hat will be the Fugo. I do this every week. If anyone can tell me how to pronounce this, that would be amazing. It's by Justina Lakowska, who also designed the tied knots hat. That was my first hat of my hat kick. And I love the yellow. I think it's absolutely beautiful. But this is going to be a gift for someone's birthday. I may give it a bit early, I don't know. But I have seen something beautiful that I think would make a stunning matching Christmas present. I was browsing Kelbourne Woolens, as you do, and I came across the January mittens. These mittens are very traditional looking. They come to quite a point at the top rather than being rounded as more modern day mittens are, and they are covered palm and back of hand with traditional Latvian colourwork. They are beautiful. They have I think the cuff has a picot edge and is a rolled cuff as well. There are so many techniques in these mittens that I have never tried before. The closest thing I've ever come to colourwork is the N in intarsia on my Weasley jumper. That was a bit of a nightmare. I have tried intarsia before and it didn't work out for me. I was trying to make a little bag for a friend. The Weasley jumper was my second attempt and I didn't enjoy it, but I was very happy with the end result. So I have a bit of a love-hate relationship with intarsia at the moment. I've never tried stranded colourwork though. I've never done a picot edge on anything. I've never done a rolled folded hem. I can't remember what it was called. I will link to them in the show notes because you need to see them. They are absolutely beautiful. But I saw them and my immediate thought was, if I did those in a dark grey with the colourwork in yellow, they would match that hat rather beautifully. And I think they would make a really beautiful Christmas present. And the person that I would be making them for would really appreciate them and would understand the work that went into them. They're quite small, so, I mean, they're large mittens, but at the end of the day, they're only mittens. So it would be a good opportunity for me to try colourwork and to try something new. I am fairly intimidated by them. They look so beautiful, and as I said, there are so many techniques involved that I've never tried before that I do wonder if I would be able to make them, that I would be able to do them justice. If you have knit the January mittens, because they did come out towards the beginning of this year, please let me know if you think they would be too complicated for a colourwork beginner and you know of something a bit easier. That would also be highly appreciated. That would be awesome. But right now I'm thinking it's too hot to work on garments, really. I've only got 2 more hats to work on when this one's finished, so they might be really good carry-around knitting. Is colourwork good for carrying around? I don't know. Either way, they would be good as a juicy small project, and if I get started now, they might actually be done in time for Christmas. Now let's move on to goal power. A super brief goal power segment because I have actually decided to drop it from the podcast. This podcast is really all about knitting and crochet and textile yarn-based crafts rather than bullet journaling and goal setting and all that good stuff. And I therefore have never felt that I could be as detailed as I want to be about what I'm doing in my planning life. So I decided that what I will do, now that I am going bi-weekly with the podcast, is use my weeks off from the podcast to film other bits occasionally. So what I'm going to do is build a dedicated bullet journal playlist on the podcast, and I'm hoping to get my first video out in the next few weeks, which will be a walk through my new bullet journal. But just to give you a taster, this is the current weekly spread I'm using, and this is at the back. You can see here, this is the elastic band that would normally go around, and this is at the back. So I have decided to go with the spread at the back for my weekly kind of planning, and then all my main spreads are at the front, and then I will eventually meet in the middle. And on this weekly spread, I have one page that breaks down my week, so all of my gym classes, any birthdays, meetups, any date-specific to-dos would go in here. And then on the other side of the page, I have a to-do list and a podcast list. So I can make a list of everything I need to do that week, tick it off as I go. I can make a note of anything I want to mention on the podcast. And then down here, I am tracking my habits and my mood. We will come to why I'm doing that in Knit and Natter, but I have found it really invaluable even though I'm only a week in. I did as I said I would, and I have set up the next year at the front. So I've literally just written the date at the top. I used highlighter and then went over it in pen. Wrote the dates down the sides, filled in any upcoming events that I already knew about, and this has been invaluable. It means I don't have to draw out a weekly spread, you know, halfway through the week, just so I've got somewhere to put plans in for next week. And it's really handy to be able to flick a few months ahead to see what I'm going to be up to see when I have time free. After my monthly breakdown, I have a financial tracker, I have a savings tracker, I'm doing a level 10 life tracker with really concrete goals. I then have a spread just for the podcast I haven't filled in yet, but is ready to go. And this is probably one of my favourite things. I found this on Instagram. I think the user was Heartistic Jen, and she did her self-care log as a sun. And basically what I've done is I'm writing in each ray things that I know cheer me up when I'm down. And I'm going to just hopefully fill that in over the course of the next few months, and it's going to be a really nice resource whenever I'm feeling a bit down. Finally, I have a Christmas tracker. This is not completely filled in. The reason I did this, for those of you who watched early episodes of the podcast, you will remember that I bought a Lustrum notebook specifically to act as my Christmas planner. I then packed it away without actually ever starting it. So I'm going to see how I can get on with a very limited spread that's just gift ideas, budget planning, just things like that. And then when I get to our new flat in October, we'll unpack, and if I have some time, I will set up a dedicated Christmas planner. But yeah, so that's just a quick walk through my new bullet journal. I already feel so much easier having used it. I have got really much better handle on my finances because I'm drawing them out. I'm aware of where everything is, what I need to do, when, what, all of that good stuff. And I just feel so much less anxious when everything's all in one place. So good news. For those of you who are fans of the ring binder system, I have popped a couple of my ring binders on eBay. My most recent purchase, the Kiki K blue with the silver embossed writing, that's on there, and I have a A5 Filofax as well on there. I will put the links in the show notes, so if you were interested, you can go and have a look. Basically, I am fully committed to my bullet journal. I don't like to hang on to things that I'm not going to use again. And it's, Pomfest is coming up and Fibre East, so it'd be quite nice to sell off those things. So I've got a bit more money to spend on yarn. But that's that. I've got a couple more spreads to fill out, and I'm hoping to have a full walk through my bullet journal in a few weeks' time. I'd like to have more weekly spreads set out so you can see, how I use them a bit more clearly than just, this is how I used it for 1 week. If you are interested in bullet journaling, planning, all that kind of thing, keep an eye out on this channel because I will be starting a dedicated Goal Power playlist, and I will be moving Goal Power out of the podcast. So hopefully I'll see you on that playlist instead. Now let's move on to Knit and Natter. This week's Knit and Natter is a little bit more serious, just because I wanted to talk about something that has become quite important to me over the last couple of weeks. And that is mental wellness. I have mentioned before that although I know people who suffer very badly from mental illness, I myself am not a sufferer. However, all of us at some time or another will experience periods of real low feelings, anxiety, and various other things. That is all part of the human condition. But I really do believe that you shouldn't worry about your mental health only if you're mentally ill. I believe that we should care as much about our mental health as our physical health. And for me, over the past couple of weeks, I have felt a little bit fragile. I have been very stressed, I've been very anxious, I have felt there is too much on my plate. I was very sad about the date of our move being pushed back, and I just generally felt very low. That manifested in feeling very low, very tired. I was probably quite run down, which is why I caught a cold. And one of the main things that I am using my bullet journal for, as you saw in the last segment, is for better self-care. Self-care is something that I am either excellent at or terrible, and it's non-existent. And over the past couple of weeks, it has been completely non-existent. I really pushed myself the week before last. On the Monday, I had an absolutely fantastic evening with friends going to Waterstones to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone being published, and I had a great time. But that was just the start of a very hectic week in which I was out after work every single evening. And then the weekend came and I felt like, it's the weekend, I should be really enjoying this. And I just ended up feeling grumpy, anxious and exhausted. And that kind of bled over into this week. And in tracking my mood every day in my bullet journal and my diet, I have noticed a very strong correlation in 1 week between how happy I am and how I treat myself physically. Taking note of that kind of stopped me. It brought me up short and I went, okay, wow, this is going down a little bit more than I was expecting. I need to have a chat about this. And over the past few days, I have been making a really concerted effort to fill in my little sunshine table of things that bring me up, things that nourish me, things that give me what I need when I'm feeling a bit low. And this is something that I feel quite strongly about because I think that it is fantastic that so many people are now talking about mental illness and people are so much more open about it. So it doesn't become this taboo subject that people feel they should be ashamed of, because you absolutely shouldn't. But I think that we should also be talking about mental health for everyone. You do not have to be mentally ill in order to take care of your mental health. In much the same way that you don't need to be physically unwell to take care of your physical body with keeping yourself hydrated, taking vitamins if you need them, eating really well, getting exercise, getting enough sleep. You do those things for your physical body, and I think that everyone should be thinking more about their mental wellness as well. For me, taking the time out this week to sit down for a little while and say, I'm really struggling at the moment. I feel really stressed, I feel very anxious, I have all these feelings and it's making me quite unhappy. I need some support. It was really, really useful, and it's something that I need to do more of when I am struggling. There are so many podcasters out there who are incredibly brave and open about their own struggles with mental health, and I think that is really important and really necessary in order to stop this taboo around mental illness. The more that everyone can understand about mental illness, the better. If we can all understand what people who are mentally ill are going through, that can only be a good thing. With mental illness, unlike physical illness, you can't see anything wrong. So it's important that we listen and we learn. But I also think it is important that we listen to our own bodies and our own minds as well. And just because you may not suffer from mental illness, as I said, I don't, that doesn't mean that when I'm having, a struggle for a couple of weeks, that I should just go, oh, well, I'm not unwell, so I should just ignore it, because that isn't a healthy way to approach things. If I'm physically exhausted because I've been doing too much, if I have a cold, just because I am not very, very ill does not mean that I don't stop to take care of myself and give myself what I need. I had a cold and I still went out every evening, so that's probably not a good example. But by the weekend, I made sure I had plenty of tablets. I had hot honey and lemons, I had lots of sleep, lots of hot baths, and it helped. And what I didn't do at the time was give my mental health the same consideration. When I stopped to do that, I felt loads better. I feel loads better now. I'm not back to 100% quite yet. I'm still working through some things that I've been anxious about. My bullet journal is helping me with that. For me, a really good strategy is getting things down on paper, making a plan, working through stuff like that is very, very calming for me. So yeah, that's kind of my knit and natter for this week. Let's all try to consider our mental health as highly as we consider our physical health, because I do think they are equally important. So maybe you, if you have a bullet journal, could start a list of things that help when you're feeling nervous or stressed or anxious. Or if you're someone who prefers talking things out, think about who you could go and talk to when you need a bit more support. These are all things that you can do that are just going to make your life that little bit easier, because being trapped in your own head is no fun. I can vouch for that. It was really horrible for a couple of days. And I feel loads better now for having talked about it, journaled about it. And yeah, I really do think that mental wellness is for everybody, and we should be talking about that in the same breath that we talk about good diet and exercise. That's just my tuppence worth there. That's all for this week. I will see you in a couple of weeks' time, and maybe there'll be tea, maybe there'll be water, but right now I need to go and get some more before I completely dry out. I hope you have a lovely couple of weeks. I will see you very soon for, well, maybe not another cup of tea, but another drink. Take care, bye. I think it's called fleur. I'm going to check what this is actually called, because I'm making a show of myself.